Hello and welcome to All Villa No Filler. Please remember to like and subscribe. Subscribe if you love this new cat. This little kitten here. His real name is Link, but he is the All Villa No Filler mascot, and he will be known as Emiliano Martinez, the cat, like our cat in goal, Emi Martinez, the world's best goalkeeper. And I guarantee you, every time he sees a dog, he's going to wind up that dog, shushing them, annoying them, getting them barking, and getting them in trouble, just like the goalkeeper would, wouldn't he? So if you subscribe, you love this cat. Do it for the cat. Come on. So the cat's now, he's just gone off to beat up some dogs because that's just what he does, giving it that like Emi Martinez. So Aston Villa Columbus Crew, it's pre-season. Of course, nothing really matters. Fitness is what matters. But sometimes you can get, hints about what might come. You get a sense of some players and what they might offer. And I think against Columbus Crew, we did see a little bit of that actually. Okay, so Columbus Crew 4, Aston Villa 1. So I think the logical conclusion of this game is that Suarez needs to sack Unai Emery. They need to get rid of the entire coaching department. Monchi needs to go. And Aston Villa need to, we've got Champions League now. We can attract any manager we want. So, see you later, Unai. No, of course, I would never think such stupid thoughts. Uh, so I think one of the more interesting things last night was how you could see that Columbus Crew had played 23 games this season and were at their absolute physical peak. Aston Villa were at the complete opposite of that. They were probably at sort of 60% energy levels with lots of key first team players not even there. Conser, Watkins, Emi Martinez, to just name a few. A few players who haven't featured at all in preseason yet, in John McGinn, Yuri Tielemans. Um, but the 4-1 result, it just does, it literally doesn't matter. But it was a good run out if you think, because in a way it was good to play a team that was well organized, and MLS is a good league. It's a much stronger league than I think is generally thought in Europe, at least. And good to play a team that's third in the Eastern Conference, and uh, playing at a certain physical level that Villa's players will just have to, good to have like a bit of a shot to the system like that. Uh, I think one of the things that was noticeable as well is how hard it is to play the high line without firstly VAR, but also how hard it is to play it without being at your sharpest. And I think last night it reminded me a little bit of the Olympiacos game. And Cucho, the Columbus striker who scored against us before for Watford, reminded me a little bit of El Kabi from Olympiacos, scored a hat trick. Just like one of them predatory strikers that if they can work out how to play the high line and they keep getting in, then they're just going to score quite a lot of goals. And I think the overriding sense was that I think Josh Feeney looks a little bit like he needs um, probably just a loan. I think lots of our young players need loans. He's certainly a very talented young guy. Emery clearly believes in him a lot to take him on this preseason tour and have him starting, games and playing alongside players like Pau Torres. I think Pau Torres himself just looked a little bit off the pace, didn't he? So I think ultimately that's probably why Villa could see as many as they did, because they just weren't at the pace. And if you look at, the first goal, simple ball across, I think Josh Feeney, he's misread it, mistimed it, and the number nine's gone for the shot. Feeney's missed it, and then it's just presented a very simple opportunity for Cucho to finish, is what he did. Um, Otherwise, I think in that half, I thought one of the positive signs was Enzo Barrenechea. He's I think he's one to watch for sure. All those I spoke to from Italian football, those watching at Frosinone, those who knew him from Juventus, they all described him as a player who very composed on the ball, wins tackles, a bit of a regista type, is what they call it in Italian football. Cleans up, plays it. And I think one of the positive things you saw from him is that, bearing in mind that he's only really coming in, getting up to full speed, there were lots of time where Columbus were pressing quite high and pressing hard around him. And he was finding a way out of that sort of pressure. Um, he just seems like a tidy player, is how you would describe it, um, with a little bit more quality than just your average tidy up player. I certainly think he's one to watch for Villa. I just quite like him, and think that it's hard to know how this midfield is going to start the season. I think John McGinn is definitely going to be a starter against West Ham. He just is. But you do wonder, will he be a second striker? Will he play alongside Onana? I think Onana is almost certainly going to be a starter with that 50 million price tag and just what he adds. But will it be Tielemans and Onana? Will it be McGinn and Onana? Or could it even be Onana and Barrenechea? Because again, I think with Onana coming in, one of the most striking things to see from him in this game was just when he came on, just seeing his physical profile, seeing this absolutely massive guy in midfield. And I was thinking to myself, when have Aston Villa ever had a midfielder who has that kind of physical dominating presence? We've had a lot of centre backs over the years who you could argue are a bit like that. Ron Vlaar, Hugo Ekiog, just off the top of my head. But to have someone in midfield who has that kind of height, who can win lots of headers, but also just win tackles and be physically dominating. I really don't know if we've ever had anyone like that. It's a unique thing to see at Villa. And I think something that was noticeable about Onana, even in this game, again, we're going to have to see more of him against high quality opposition. But he demanded the ball, he wanted it, and he liked to drive forward. And he made one superb pass through the lines to Jaden Philogene, which looked to me a little bit like, okay, we suggested this, when I interviewed Matt Jones from the Everton podcast, The Blue Room, you know, what is Onana? And I think at Everton, he described him as a player who liked to do the pretty stuff. He wanted everything to look good. Uh, and I think that at Everton, he sort of came out the team towards the end of the season, and Idrissa Gana Gueye came in and started to be that more of a tackler, more destructive, harder presser. But I think with Onana, what I got from the sense was like maybe he actually could be a Douglas Luiz replacement. And I didn't think that when I first saw that we'd signed him. I sort of thought, well, I know we've got Boubacar Kamara coming back, but he's a long way away, probably. December, January probably is when we might see him again. And I know just signed Barrenechea, who is a kind of CDM. But looking at Onana, I thought, well, maybe I could see him starting as a CDM and then Tielemans beside him or a McGinn beside him. But now even just from the brief stuff I saw yesterday and thinking back on that interview with Matt Jones, I wondered whether maybe Emery might actually have a vision that Onana can be a Douglas Luiz, but a more physical version of him. Look, Luiz is a fantastically technical and brilliant player, but maybe at the age of 22, there's something about Onana that we've not yet seen or he's not had the opportunity to do when playing for either Belgium or Everton. And you do think that a Sean Dyche team, it's not really about retention of the ball in midfield, is it? It is more about defensive solidity, direct balls into large strikers, laying it off. It's a very it's a style that works. It's certainly a style that keeps, he's kept teams in the Premier League for a long time, but it's not necessarily a style that suits all different players, just as some Villa players probably don't suit Everton. And I think that Onana, just a couple of brief things I saw from him yesterday, demanding the ball, wanting it, pushing forward, that whipped ball through the line into Philogene. I wonder if he might end up becoming a bit of, he's not going to be the CDM. He's actually going to fall into that Luiz role. I think it's a really interesting one to watch. If I was to gamble and bet now, I'd say I think he starts as the CDM. But I don't know. I just kind of think maybe Emery's vision is for him to is to express a bit more of his attacking prowess and to become that talisman in centre midfield. And I try and think what his physical kind of a comparison is in midfield that I think of a big, tall midfielder with technical ability. You could probably look at Souček at Everton, but he doesn't really have that technical ability. You're probably looking more at a Yaya Toure potentially. So fascinating. It's going to be really, really fascinating to see what becomes of Onana at Villa. I think just seeing him there immediately, seeing his height and sort of physical prowess, you were like, bloody hell, Villa have needed that for a long time. Because let's face it, at times last season, it felt like Villa, particularly from January onwards, would go from composed and in control to too casual. There were so many examples of Villa going into 2-0 leads, 1-0 leads, even 3-0 leads against Nottingham Forest. And then the team, we would just kind of, it was almost like we'd just become a little bit lackadaisical, too casual. And the other team would just go for it because they had nothing to lose anymore. And then they'd score a couple of goals, whipping the ball into the area. Um, I think Onana hopefully can help in that sense, and I think he's really a player to watch this season. Whether he becomes a more attacking player than perhaps we've ever seen at Everton or with Belgium, and as I said, Barrenechea in the first half, I have a feeling if he can translate that sort of technical ability and tackling ability that he's been showing so far, and what he showed last season at Frosinone, and what he's shown for Juventus, you think could he become a player who becomes a little bit of a cult hero for Villa? Comes on, tidies up, and maybe even works his way into a starting position at some point. Who knows? I think they're just two players to watch. And again, another player I quite like is Nedeljkovic. A couple of times now in pre-season, he has sent balls over the top to the right midfielder that's been perfectly weighted. And he really clearly likes to get forward, doesn't he? He loves to do overlaps, underlaps. He's a physical big player. He's 18, so obviously a lot to learn. There's been a couple of occasions where there's just been direct balls over the top, and his positioning's not been great against Spartak and against Columbus. But it's pre-season, can't judge too much. But um, there's certainly something about him just on the eye that you can really see. His high impact, gets up and down the pitch. He's a real athlete, and he's technically very good on the ball. A couple of touches he did, first time getting away from a player was really good and really positive. So you kind of think, okay, I can see on the eye again here what I think Monchi in the scouting department saw and why they wanted to sign him from Red Star, a player with Champions League experience for a young guy. Um, Again, not somebody that I think immediately off the top of my head would go on loan this season. He might do, he might, but I don't know. I think there's something there. Otherwise, the second goal that I can think of, I think it was just a direct ball over the top. We lost it midfield. It's hard to remember all of them now. Let me have a think what it was. It was, yes, Pal Torres misplacing a pass. As I said earlier, he looked off the pace, ball over the top, high line just got found, and I felt a bit for Josh Feeney there. He sort of, it was just really difficult. It was a good ball. It really fundamentally was Pal Torres' fault for giving the ball away, and then just it looked a bit easy to finish it, didn't it, for Cucho? And then Villa pull one back. And if you look at where Cameron Archer actually got the ball, it was superb work from him to to get it to get it to score because he had difficult position. He had a defender to beat, and then eventually it ended up being three Columbus players around him. Really good finish, really tidy finish. That's two goals in preseason for him. And I know it's preseason, but for a striker to be scoring goals is just a really good sign, and it's good. It's good for their confidence to be scoring no matter when or where it is. And I do remember last year in preseason, it felt a little bit like fate was just against him, didn't it? Like he just couldn't get a bloody goal. Various reasons for that. Just he was just unlucky, and yeah, good for him. Good finish, and you do think is he going to be playing for Aston Villa this season? John Duran's on his way by the looks of things. So yeah, who knows? He's a homegrown player, and maybe he scored 4 goals for Sheffield United last season in the Premier League. I get it; it's not a great record, but it's his first full season in the Premier League, having scored a lot of goals in the Championship. So he surely can score goals in the Premier League at least. Uh, and again, Sheffield United, like Onana at Everton, it's a different thing. And Sheffield United were an absolute toxic mess last season. So I don't think you can judge really many players on their time there last season. So him coming back into Villa, you never know. He might just be a player that comes on in games and just gets the odd goal here and there that ends up being actually quite crucial. So yeah, good luck to him. Good to see him get a goal. But Aston Villa, having got that goal, immediately conceded. Torres again just looking off the pace. Cucho easily beats him, uh, turns his side, and it's a good finish. Not sure Gauchi, he looked a bit easy to beat with it. Not 100% sure Emi Martinez lets that in. Again, Gaucho, a young player, so you can't judge him too heavily. But some of his ball playing was good, but there were one or two you thought, did he look a bit easy to beat there? Again, one to watch as time goes on. Uh, Second half, not much more to say. I think the goal, we can see the fourth goal in the 51st minute. I have no idea what Matty Cash is doing. That just looks to me like lack of sharpness, lack of fitness against a team who have a lot more sharpness, and then they just go and score a pretty easy goal. Matty Cash won't want to remember that too much. But otherwise, it was good to see Philogene. He looked sharp. He looked good. Ian Matson coming on as well. Looked sharp. You can see what his set role is going to be. One occasion where he got to the byline and pulled a fantastic pass across the area. No striker was there to finish it. Um, but I think, yeah, but there's some positive signs from, I think, Onana, Matson, and Philogene. You can sort of see their fundamental roles, what they're going to be. And yeah, I think it's interesting as well with Philogene because, last season I just our left-sided players, it tended to be Morgan Rogers and Ramsey when he was fit. The two of them tend to be a bit more on the half turn, run directly at a defence, whereas I think Philogene's a bit more tight spaces, a bit tricky, and likes to go out wide, hug the touchline, and get to the byline and pull it back. And I think there was some, again, really positive signs from him. He just offers something different out on the left, and suddenly you look at Villa's squad and you think, Emi Buendia came back as well. Fantastic to see him. He looked, a bit rusty, but also quite sharp, quite physical. Again, another tremendous asset to have come back. Fantastic to see him back after a full year out. Um, but I think with Villa, it was you look at the full squad and you think there's a lot of options there for Emery. And if you think to last season when, Boubacar Kamara did his ACL, uh, we'd already sent Dendoncker on loan to Napoli, so clearly Emery doesn't really fancy Dendoncker. But when Kamara did that injury, suddenly Louise had to go back into that CDM role, and McGinn, and we just didn't quite have that squad depth to. Although we did really well, amazing. It's amazing what Villa did last season with the constant injury crisis, but it didn't really feel like we had that many options when injuries came for a few different positions. Whereas this season, or rather in this preseason so far, you have to think more players are going to come in and some are going to go out. But it does look a bit like Villa have a few more options now. Um, Barrenechea, I think, is probably a Dendoncker replacement. You've got Kamara coming back in later this season. Then you've got Onana can play in CDM. You've got McGinn can play there. Even Tielemans if he has to. The options are pretty solid. And then again, out wide, you've got Eiling Jr., Philogene, uh, Morgan Rogers, Jacob Ramsey, who can all function in different roles or play specifically on the left. You've got Matson, one of Dean and Moreno possibly stays. Interesting that Luca Dean played at centre back. That does make me wonder about Mario Hermoso. Hermoso can play left back. He can play centre back. Loads and loads and loads of experience. He's a bit of a ball playing centre back in the way Pau Torres is. He's probably a little bit more physical than Torres. He's maybe not as good on the ball as Torres. So, you give and take a little bit there, but he can play out at left back. And I think Dean playing at centre back felt a little bit to me like, I wonder if that might be a sign that our left centre back options aren't at the moment where they need to be. And that if Hermoso comes in, suddenly you've got Hermoso, Torres, you've got Matson, maybe a Dean or Moreno, or an Eiling Jr. to play at left back. Hermoso can go out to left back as well. Suddenly you're like, bloody hell, there's loads of options there. As I've just mentioned with centre midfield as well, all them CDMs, all them left-sided midfielders, others who can play at second strike, like Morgan Rogers, that's the role he played again against Columbus. He's played that role every single time in preseason. You have to think that's where he's going to go. You have to think there's probably going to be a replacement for Moussa Diaby in the form of potentially a João Felix. Go see the Samuel Marsden interview I did about that, the from Siempre Positiva, Barcelona podcast, and ESPN writer. So, if you've got Felix potentially there as well, and then Bailey on the right, maybe Philogene could play there as an option. Uh, you just start to think, well, where are the squad weaknesses really? And I still think second goalkeeper worries me a bit. Duran goes, we're gonna have to replace that definitely because if Watkins, God forbid, gets injured, that's not going to be good. Right centre back, I think the right side of the defence is where I do still think Villa need something. I think Konsa uh, coming back will be obviously great. But you do wonder, does he have that aerial dominance that we could really do with back there? We concede way too many set pieces. Onana should help in that sense. Maybe Hermoso would help if he comes in. But having Konsa as a potential right back as well as a potential centre back, but also having somebody who's just aerial wins headers and good on the ball, easier said than to actually find those players. But you can't help but think that would be beneficial to Villa, I think. But yeah, I know it was a 4-1 loss, but a lot of like little hints here and there about, some positives that are to come, some positives about the squad, some concerns here and there, I think. But overall, be interesting to see how this preseason develops and see the team get fitter and sharper and start to see that first 11 come together by the time we play Athletic Bilbao at the Poundland Stadium in Warsaw and Borussia Dortmund away as well, of course. Thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like what we do. 5-star reviews help massively. If you could go on Spotify on your phone, just give us a 5-star review, or on Apple iTunes, go on there, just click 5 stars. That's all you got to do. Or if you're so kind, you can maybe write a review. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That also helps us grow as well. So there we go. 4-1 loss, but really, I don't feel bad about it because it's preseason. Who cares? They were fit and sharp. They're halfway through their season. We haven't even got close to starting ours yet. So 1 or 2 positives here and there. A few things to be excited about. And a few things as well for Unai Emery, I'm sure, to be thinking about. Up the mighty Villa.